trauma is everywhere. It doesn't stay in one profession or in one sphere of our life.
Dr. Scott Lyons is known as the body-based trauma expert, as well as helping people breaking free from cycles of pain, limiting beliefs, and body-centered trauma.
Let's be very clear that people chase the trauma to avoid their trauma.
And why is trauma so, why is it so deep?
Oh my gosh.
Hi, Dr. Scott.
Hello. Thanks for having me on your amazing show.
Dude, we're doing this.
It's a
You're a vibe. And it's even more vibey if you're actually catching us on the YouTube is your plant that's like right behind you.
I just moved here and this is all I could find in a couple days. This beautiful mother-in-law's tongue, which is
It's
it's
it's great.
effervescent.
Yeah, and it's it's also giving really good jungle vibes. Brave Table fam, Dr. Scott and I, we go way back. I was actually on his Gently Used Human podcast, which we will link in the show notes. And I'm just beyond excited, honored, really to have you here because when we met, it was like, bing!
It
Two
was a
people
Katy
talking
Perry fireworks song.
It was. You are the one person, and I want my audience to really dive into the juiciness of who you are because you have a range,
Oh.
You have a range. Like we can go really deep. I mean, you are the founder of the Embody Lab. Hello. We talk about trauma. And I was on your summit, by the way. Everyone needs to go check that out, and we'll link it also in the show notes.
You were brilliant.
Oh, thank you. I loved pouring into your community.
We loved you. We love you.
Okay,
Current, present
but
tense.
today, but wait, today's about you. And
Okay.
so, how can we go from, or teach us and teach our community how we can go from being so light and just you are like levity on a different level, and then we can go into our dark shadow trauma. And why is trauma so why is it so deep?
Well, it literally is deep because it situates itself in the deepest core of our body, in our nervous system, in our cells, in our DNA, even, or how our genes are expressed. That shit goes deep. And when you talk about levity, I think that trauma is and has become more and more such a part of so many of our lives. And one of the things that often happens as that freezing in our lives, our bodies happens, is we start to have a miss or a lack of play, humor, levity. And it's not to say that, playing around, joking, having clowning around is the only cure for trauma. It's not. But it does something so significant. Literally, the movement of our diaphragm helps release some of the freeze in our nervous system. That guttural laugh helps reduce some of the inflammation that is stored in response to the trauma. I mean, that's amazing.
And well, I want to kind of double click on that a little bit because you are the one that really you bring light into the trauma space. But I feel like even with a lot of the courses that you have at the Embody Lab, you're bringing some of the world's greatest leaders, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But how did Dr. Scott get to where he is today?
Ooh, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think about the major milestones in my life, and I look back and I'm like, things like I had severe learning disabilities as a child. I was told I would never even graduate high school, and I remember going into that meeting with my parents and them sitting us down and being like, it's best to make a plan of how to navigate Scott after if he even can graduate high school. And part of it was like I I was navigating my own trauma that was so prevalent in my being that it's showed up as like ADHD and dyslexia and an inability to focus and an inability to sit still. Not that
Mm.
sitting still is the ultimate goal, let me tell you.
Right.
But all of these things make it more challenging to learn and participate in the traditional education model. And so for me, this was a major part of my life of when I was like, uh, no, I I'm not going to accept other people's sense of my future and my reality. Like I'm not
Mm.
going to internalize that. That's for them. That's not for me. And I remember making that decision. I was like, I'm going to find the things that allow me to focus, that allow me to attend to all the interesting and utilize all my curiosity that I had so much of in life. And I did. I found somatics. I found, which is like, and often used in body based therapies, but somatic is essentially meaning soma, which is the body, the living body. And our first primal language is not, I'm speaking English, we could speak Spanish or Hindi. That's our
Mhm.
secondary language. We all share a universal language before we speak those secondary languages. And that's the sensation, the breath, movement within the body. That is how we communicate within ourselves and to other people and receive communication from other people and express ourselves.
Mm.
So, somatics is really the practice of coming back into our primary language and using that to get unstuck.
Mm.
All the places like trauma that get us stuck, that keep us from thriving or growing or evolving or developing in the ways that we want to, coming back home allows us to organize, connect, and metabolize the things that have got us stuck.
Mm. Oh, I love that you're breaking this down for us because I remember when I was first introduced to a somatic practitioner,
Yeah.
like, gosh, after my, first marriage, I was
Yeah.
down in the dumps and
Woo.
and everyone was trying to just get me to see talk therapy and I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, been there, done that. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's got to be more. And then
Yeah.
my, coming from a background of India and kind of the
Yeah.
ancient wisdom and the Vedic philosophies, I kind of did the whole eat, pray, love and went to the ashrams and started visiting all of the things that my passed on transitioned dad always used to tell me. And that's when it became cool. And I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, I'm going to go into it. But it was still like, let's sit down and,
Yeah.
let's meditate. And it was very much ritualistic, which was great.
Mm.
But then I met a somatic healer. And, this was in Bali, of course, because why not?
Why not? That's what one does in Bali.
Because but I just remember, flailing my arms. It was kind of just a full
Mm.
cathartic experience
Yeah.
and just finally allowing my body to release and do and move and moan in
Yeah.
ways I never thought possible. Like, you would always think that this is something that people, you're having an exorcism. I mean, I had a Catholic mother growing up, so
Yeah.
it was
It can feel like an exorcism where it's like outside of your volitional control. And it is. It's like a total discharge or release that's been waiting to happen.
Can you
And
talk to us about that though? Like, what
yeah.
is happening with the body? Why are we so afraid to go there? Because it's
Mm.
all, I know somatics now is having its heyday
It's
and
having a
everyone
heyday.
it's having they're having their heyday. But before all of this, this was, it was all mental. It was everyone was
Yeah.
talking about the mental,
Yeah.
and the mind.
Yeah.
And they would
Yeah.
even confuse mind and emotional body.
Yeah.
Now we're actually separating the two and I feel like you are the person. Let's dive into that.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day of like therapy, it was body based. That's the crazy thing is that
Mm.
it fell out of fashion with Freud. And then the next kind of iteration of therapy was more cognitive behavioral. And that has had a heyday for a long time. It was very practical or is practical. It really reflects back the behavior and how to change it. And there was another kind of small renaissance of body based therapies. you know, and unfortunately, it went into more of a catharsis approach, meaning like you're going to navigate your trauma by going and pretending this pillow is that villain, and you're going to punch the pillow until you have properly, defended the time you couldn't defend, or something like that.
Mhm.
And what often happened, not always, but happened enough, is that people would pass the point to which they were able to be present in themselves and attune to the release. And they would often re-trigger and re-traumatize themselves in the process.
Mm.
And so now somatics has taken a much more attentive role or approach in going like, we find the sacred pause.
Mm.
We check in a lot. We might do a little bit of release work, and then we pause and we go, what's happening now? As opposed to keep going and trying to cheerlead someone into a sort of violent catharsis, which, sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, but it just wasn't safe enough for the most
Mm.
part.
And I love that when, if that person is ready, then they
Yeah,
release. But what
they did.
what can actually happen? Because
Yeah.
then I've seen certain practitioners or people kind of, I think that sometimes it can be misused. So can you kind of go into that as well?
Oh, can you say more about misuse?
Yeah, misuse meaning that maybe they're not fully trauma informed, or,
Mm,
you're going to a big event and, there's people, or they think that they can hold the space for that full release,
mm,
but then there's not, the
yeah.
integration sometimes is missing. And
Yeah.
so if you can talk about the steps to
Yeah.
how, what you guys actually do differently at the Embody Lab.
Yeah. So, one of the main things that is so important if you want to be a practitioner is your own embodiment. And why I say that is your own ability to register the inner sensations and processes of your body. If you are sharing with me a story that is intense, violent, and I find myself, or I don't find myself, I'm just doing it, drifting away or dissociating, I have violated a sacred trust with a client, and it is felt in the space. And some part of them registers, oh, when I go back to my trauma to heal, people can't be here with me,
Mm.
and that gets sort of myelinated. And so it's so imperative that a practitioner is doing their own work to expand their capacity and are honest enough to say, hey, we need to pause here, this is beyond my range,
Mm.
and I really want to connect you with other folks who can really hold this. And it doesn't make me bad, it doesn't make you bad, it just means that we're being honest enough to create the most amount of safety.
Mm.
There are times in my career where I have said that. I'm like, this is bigger than I can hold. And what would it be like for me to bring someone else in or to work in tandem or anything like this? And on the other side, I have worked as a trauma therapist for a long time. I have heard and and resonated with some of the most horrific things I could have ever imagined, way beyond my
Mhm.
privileged upbringing could ever imagine.
Mhm.
And uh, I found myself going, whoa, I can get bigger and hold this with them. I can be present with them. And it's not like I'm saying that to get a trophy or an award, but it is for many of us the desire to be able to continuously be present enough within ourselves and expand our capacity to hold that presence with other people in whatever they're going through.
Mm. Even if it makes us uncomfortable.
Oh my gosh, it's totally uncomfortable. My gosh, I mean, the things I have heard, and like, I don't know if you've read Bessel's book of The Body Keeps a Score, and he
Oh, yeah.
talks about some really, violent experiences in terms of rape and incest. And it's like, you know, it's never going to be comfortable to be in a room with that. That's not the
Mhm.
point. It's, can you be with your own discomfort and still be with another person in theirs and go,
Mm.
this is really hard. Oof, this is so. painful. This is, and no, and one of the things that I did that I found early on to prevent burnout was to know this was like their relationship with trauma was not written in stone for the rest of their life, that they
Hmm.
have a future, that even if it's just the smallest amount of more sense of safety in their life, that holding on to that sense that we're going to find that together, or if it's not with me, they're going to find it with someone else,
Hmm.
because that is also our human nature. Our human nature is to protect ourselves in so many ways from the trauma, and it is our human nature to find our way out and back home to ourselves.
Hmm. And so now, because when you decided to create the Embody Lab,
Yeah.
when was it like the, light bulb went off and you were kind of like, all right, I see that there's a gap
Yeah.
because you've been a trauma specialist, trauma expert, leading
Yeah.
people through these, kind of somatic bodily breakthroughs and healing. And then they're starting to kind of now take action in their lives.
Yeah.
When did you think it was that you were ready, or that this needed a space of its own? Because that's
Yeah.
essentially what you did.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I previous to COVID, I was traveling about 9 or 10 months of the year, around the world teaching. And I, at a certain point, was like, having invitations of places I couldn't go and going, wow, there's such a desire for this. And I'm burning out from traveling.
Mm.
And the two in combination of like, I can't sustain this. And there's a real craving in the world for more somatic, accessible somatic education. And so I was like, well, let's make it even more accessible then. What if we brought it online? And so I started sort of dreaming that, in about January or so, and had planned my first big online event in, April of the year that COVID started.
Wow.
So, and it was like the first event. Um, it was interesting. Like I was learning a lot, and up until about the 1st of April, there was maybe like 3,000 people signed up, and I was like, okay, that's a lot. That's amazing, and that's it's 3,000 people I couldn't necessarily go out and teach to where they are, and it's free, and I love this. And by the by the over the next 2 or 3 weeks, it went from like 3,000 to 100,000
Oh my
people
gosh.
who had signed up for the, and I was like, oh, okay, here we go. And I had this amazing team. I started developing, and after that big event that had about 100,000 people in it, I was like, I think this is a sign that I should just really build a platform. And the first platform I did, it didn't feel quite right. I built an online embodied yoga platform,
Hmm.
and I was like, this isn't it. Like I have always loved yoga. I was teaching it for a long time, but like my roots are in psychology. My roots are in somatic
Yeah.
therapy, and I was like, so I rebranded, about 6 months after I launched the platform and started the Embody Lab, and it blew up. I was like, oh my gosh, there has been such a thirst for this, and I'm so glad I can help quench that thirst around the world with bringing in my friends who are these amazing teachers, and bringing them all together to offer their wisdom. And I feel so grateful every day that I get to wake up and continue that vision, and support people over the world through this process.
I mean, I feel like I knew the Embody Lab even before, and was taking courses even before I was introduced to you. And then we had our BFF bestie moment, and then I'm
Uh-huh.
like, oh, oh,
Yeah. Well,
okay.
well, for a long time, I didn't tell people I founded it. I didn't want to be
I
the
can see that.
front, and I wanted the mission to be the lead. And it
Mm.
wasn't until my book came out where I stepped forward more as, um, as an expert in the field as
Yeah.
part of what it's like to go on book tour, and we decided to be like, okay, it might be time for me to step forward and say hello as the founder. And it was funny, a lot of people didn't know. I mean, it's on the website, it's very small at the bottom, or it was, but yeah, it was. And it's been a really interesting process to sort of step forward and hold that space more in a spotlight too.
Yeah.
um, and it's a journey, I'll tell you that much. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yes, your book, Addicted to Drama, which
Addicted to drama. You
okay,
have to
because we have
sing
to
it.
get
I don't know if I told you that.
wait, what?
You have to sing
Addicted
the
to
title.
Drama.
Yeah, see how fun is that?
So fun. So fun. So, and by the way, is this a somatic practice that we just did?
Yeah, it's we could say it's tonifying the vagal nerve with a little bit of singing. Absolutely.
Okay.
So a little bit of more rest and digest on the way.
On the way. And
On the way.
the vagus nerve is getting a lot of attention these days. So can
It's
we
hot to trot. It is hot
it,
to
it's
trot.
it's can we bring how these practices affect the vagus nerve? And then I want to get into your book Addicted to Drama because there's just so much to unpack there.
Yeah. So the vagal nerve is what we call a cranial nerve that comes on down and innervates our like, what's the easiest, best way to take, many years of research into like 30 seconds? And it's a nerve that innervates the organs, which helps stimulate the part of us that goes more into rest and digest, recuperation, re-energizing. It's the balancing act between our sympathetic. And so there are certain things and certain activities like connecting face to face with someone, innervating the parts of our throat through sound that help us tonify and activate that particular nerve. And it's cool, like it's real things that we can easily do
Mhm.
to help us bring us into a specific state that's more grounded and anchored.
Yeah, and I mean because you also have a background in theater,
I do.
a- addicted to drama, which is why I feel like I love the pun, the,
I
the
yeah,
double entendre.
yeah. I mean, gosh, I look back at that time in my life when I was an actor, I was a director, like directing operas, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's interesting that the theater is like, it was such a depository for my own dependency on crisis and chaos. It was
Mhm.
like, it's the exaggerated, intensified emotions on stage that you got to like curate. It was the big elaborate scenes and the big elaborate sets and the big lights and the intensity of like anything could go wrong at any minute, especially with live
Mm.
work. And it does go wrong, and then you have to like, you get into this super activated, stressed out state that for some of us we feel empowered by.
Yeah.
And we go to work with it, and we take that all that stress energy, and it makes us feel like we have a sense of purpose and value because we channel it into getting things done, or moving through the survival mode into some active activity, and that feels rewarding. Yeah.
Well, and so, and I kind of want to tie it back to the Embody Lab
Sure.
because I feel like some of these practices, and also, this is for all of our mom listeners too. We think, how can we actually start to teach our kids
Mhm.
how to play with their voice and use their
Mm.
voice? And if I'm going to bring back, Ayurveda
Yeah.
and kind of activate your throat chakra. And
Yeah.
so, because we're also activating that vagus nerve
Hmm.
as well, do you think that you being in theater as well as an actor, director, and, allowing yourself to sing, do you think that early on that kind of were probably some of the beginnings of, using somatics as a way to heal
Mm.
and assimilate um, sorry, acclimate and
Mm.
transform or alchemize some of the trauma that was going on. And do you think that, we should be exposing this to our kids?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to the early times of development, and you hear all the cooing, those baby sounds as they're, on their way to developing their secondary language of words. But in the meantime, sounding is both an expression, but it's also kind of an echolocation of finding like our self. Like if
Mm.
you close your lips and hum inside, you'll notice where the sensation resonates, like maybe it even resonates in your
Mm.
chest or your pelvis, your legs. And part of what's
Mm.
happening, as in addition to the expression that's happening with sound as infants, is they're also finding themselves through that stimulus. They're mapping their embodied sense of where and who they are through their entire development, but especially through movement and sound.
Mm.
And so like as we get older and we're told to keep quiet, or
Yep.
you know I was in choir class but told I had a terrible singing voice. And
Oh.
so like like so many of us have, and we shut down, or our parents tell us to be quiet or shut up or whatever it is, or teachers or other people, and we start to retract in our throat. And what we don't recognize is we're also limiting then our capacity to stimulate that vagal nerve and self-soothe ourselves
Mm.
and support ourselves into that rest digest space. And so it's really sad about how these things, limit us in our ability to really take care of ourselves as we get older. I think as I got into like college and I was given more permission to sing, and I started actually also, navigating a lot of my dissociative patterns.
Mm.
And meaning like I
What were some
started
of
to,
those patterns?
oh, they're limitless. I would, the things that people would say was my ADHD was really dissociation. Like I would drift off while I was driving and not know how I got from one spot to another.
Mhm.
When people were talking, my eyes would just widen and I would freeze and couldn't say anything. I would
Mm.
often have visions that I was going to be attacked. And I would just sort of shut down and collapse. And, it was a radical disconnection from my body. I had these moments when I was really young. I remember jumping off a couch, which is kind of scary and exciting for any kid. And I
Yep.
remember these moments where I was like, oh, what is that? That's a weird thing that I feel in my body. And that weird thing I feel in my body was a sense of me. It was through this thrill seeking that I got it for the first time. But I remember making a mental note, 6 or 7 or something, going, I want more of that. Not the thrill seeking. I want to feel more of myself because it felt real. So much of my
Mm.
life felt like I was a walking ghost, like I wasn't real, like the world wasn't real. And so my voice very much replicated that. Of course I was out of tune all the time. I couldn't match someone else's sound or rhythm. And as I got more in my body, I was able to start to have a real solid singing voice. I
Mm.
did a lot of performing and singing in my day. Um, and a lot of musicals even in New York City. And it really shifted. I mean, we might not even think about that correlation so much, but like my expression of my voice was absolutely a symptom of my dissociation.
Yeah.
And when I came back more into myself, my voice was full. I was able to match other people's tones or piano's tones or pitches,
Mhm.
and even have more flexibility of rhythm.
Yeah. And even have more play because
My God.
why not? Why
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 not?
why take
Huh?
ourselves so seriously?
Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I really just appreciate. I have a few friends who are clowns and trauma therapists, and I just love the work they're doing of like teaching clowning as a way of like liberation from the things that
Well,
have
and
oppressed us. Yeah.
yeah, and is the healing journey Is the trauma healing journey supposed to be serious?
I think it looks different for every single person. And it for some of us, it might be condensed into a shorter period of time. For some of us, it's a whole lifetime or many lifetimes,
Mhm.
depending on your belief system. And for like my healing journey of finding somatics and getting and rolling around on the ground and like doing breath work is going to be different than, let's say, a friend of mine who discovered cognitive behavioral therapy and having a therapist that just really was so relational and kind and trustworthy that she got to really talk through or at least share so many of the pains of her life. So it's going to look different for each person, and it's very, healing is a phasic model. So
Mm.
meaning like there are certain stages along the way. Certainly like awareness is a big stage. Like I'm aware there's even some pain or an ache, or I'm aware of the ways I avoid contact with my emotions
Mm.
by creating drama, for example.
Yeah.
You know, however it is that we kind of protect ourselves from being in relation to ourselves and other people. And then there's a lot of different modalities and ways in which we will release some of what's stored or release the patterns of protection around what's
Ooh,
stored.
yeah.
All of that. And it's non-linear. You're going to have a great experience that you're going to have that big release on the floor that's like you're shaking or whatever, like you and I both
Yep.
had.
Yep.
And then the next week you date another person who's toxic and or has toxic tendencies, and you're like, but I released that. I got over that. Come on.
And then
And
we
you're
judge
like,
ourselves for it.
and then we judge ourselves and we shame ourselves and we let other people shame us or whatever,
Mhm.
and and then we feel like we backslid and we never really did any work. It's just, it's all part of the journey in the process. It's just harder to tell while you're in it.
Mm. And so now, and I want to kind of say more, and we'll link, everyone's got to get the book Addicted to Drama, because I
Like,
think that we've all been there. That's number one. And Brave Table fam, you've heard plenty around, healing from drama and trauma. But for those who maybe are tuning in for the first time,
yeah,
can you give us a little synopsis of, what they can expect from the book, Addicted to
yeah,
Drama, and why maybe we are addicted to certain people who, are drama focused, or that we keep dating those kinds of people? And how do
yeah,
we start releasing that?
yeah. I think if I said to you or anyone here and said, you know, close your eyes for a moment or keep them open, whatever's more comfortable, and think for a moment, do you know someone in your life that is addicted to stress or constantly seems to be in turmoil or chaos or crisis? You know, is someone in which they make mountains out of molehills. So something small becomes something very globalized and big. Do you know someone who interrupts their own peace, who hops from one crisis to the next, who really spends more of their energy gossiping than really talking about their hero's journey? You know, and maybe that person is really clear in your mind. Or if I just say, do you know someone addicted to drama? And you're like, absolutely. And maybe that person or some of those tendencies you recognize in yourself. And that's okay too. And part of what is so important to understand is almost all of us know someone, but it's never really been unpacked. It's just, for a long time, it was just this idea of like, oh, people are just attention hungry.
Mhm.
That actually couldn't be farther from the truth. Often people who are severely traumatized, and let's be very clear that people chase the drama to avoid their trauma.
Mhm.
So when I say people who are severely traumatized, I'm talking about those who are addicted to drama. And, you know, it, what they're doing to the best of their ability is surviving. and drama, and we can easily go like, and it's written about in the book, it's like, why would anyone create more havoc in their life as a way of protecting themselves? And
Mm.
it's actually quite interesting because that is exactly what we do. So many of us interrupt our own peace to avoid contact with the vulnerable sensations and feelings we don't want to be in relation to. That and drama is the unnecessary stress and turmoil.
Mm.
It's the exaggeration and intensification of behaviors and emotions and stories where it feels like it's disproportionate in the amount of energy and attention to like what's happened in the situation to the reaction and the outcome. And it's
Yeah.
really like, and so that's drama.
Mm.
And the like, how would some of us become addicted to it? Part of it is like it offers something to us. Like I said, it keeps us from being in deep contact with ourselves. It prevents us from being in the vulnerability of relationships. It literally gives us energy to be in a stress state. We, in heightened stress states or states of drama, it's actually a natural pain reliever. It blocks the pain receptors. So
Mm.
all these things we start to grow an attachment to as a means of surviving, as a means of trying to just make our way through the world, and in not meaningly creating a tornado wherever we go, or they create a tornado wherever they go.
I love that metaphor so much. And I just want to even recap what you just shared because I think it's so huge. People chase drama to avoid their trauma. And
Yeah.
it couldn't be any more, I mean, so poignant, which is why, we all can either relate, we can resonate, we've either been
Yeah.
there, and we know people that are still there. And how do we then either have compassion for that person, in the friends group that kind of always needs something, or it's, your aunt or your mother-in-law or somebody like that. How can we hold the the compassion without perhaps getting sucked into their tornado?
Hmm. I think some of it is like understanding what's actually happening, that this is not something that is, it feels very personal. It's not meant to be personal,
Because
you
it's so
know.
easy to just say, I'm not going to pick up the phone. I'm not going to text
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
They're in their thing again.
They're in
I
their
don't want
thing
to hold
again.
this.
Yeah. And sometimes you can't, and that's fair. And sometimes it's because we don't know what's actually why, the root cause of why they're doing this. And sometimes understanding the underlying cause gives us more empathy, and we're like, oh, this is them in their survival response. This is them having to chase cues of danger to preserve and feel safe in the world. And it's like when we get that, we go, oh, that's what's happening. They're not meaning to bring me in and try to pull me in and wrap me around their wheel of crisis. It's but, and at the other side, if you can't hold space for them, if even the empathy, and there's a lot of practices in my book about how do you take care of you so you can be with them, if that is not possible, you are entitled to walk away.
Hmm.
You're entitled to say, not right now, I just can't. And that's, and you are allowed to do that there, in the same way I began today, where I said I can't hold, I was a younger therapist, and I said I can't hold space for this yet. Can I bring
Hmm.
someone else in, or can I recommend you to someone who I really believe can? We're entitled to that as humans who aren't therapists too, in relation to people who are addicted to drama.
Ooh. I mean, this book is golden. It's golden, and it's something that I think that, because we all have that person, right? And I think that as we are braving relationships, as we are
Mm.
braving having these conversations, as we are braving navigating our own somatic body and learning about what triggers us, what causes us pain, what causes us discomfort, can we lean into it, but also being able to be boundaried. And I feel like your book is like a great first step. And then they can go into the Embody Lab to get way more info, because I feel like, how many courses do you guys have now? Because you have many certifications. I mean, you've got a certification dropping like weekly. I feel like that's why everyone's so trauma informed. It's because of the Embody Lab. and I
You're,
and I have a coaching organization as well. So
you
I feel
do.
like a lot of
You,
people, they go, they go and they learn, and then they're all ready, so I feel like it's such a hub for people are so thirsty. So can you just take us
mhm.
through how the Embody Lab is structured? For Is it
Yeah.
just for psychologists or therapists that
No.
are trained, or is it for everyone?
Yeah. The Embody Lab's for everyone. Trauma is everywhere. It doesn't stay in one profession or in one sphere of our life. And so it means that give everyone access to become trauma informed, to have real tools to attend to themselves, to connect with other people, means that we are healing the world. And to make that accessible is so paramount to our vision on the Embody Lab. We have a membership where you can hang out with some of the most well-known somatic teachers. We have workshops, we have certificates if you want to if take that curiosity into applying in more depth. And we have immersions. We have a big 5-day immersion with Gabor Mate and Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine and myself and a few other amazing faculty live in San Diego. This is our first live event. We've been strictly online,
Oh,
and
so
that's
this is a
a
full live event. Wait, because I want to
yeah.
talk about this. This is huge. You've got all
Thanks.
of the, like, everyone from the full trauma sphere, from
Yeah,
Dr. Peter Levine to Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, Dr. Gabor Mate, obviously yourself, Dr. Ariel Schwartz,
yeah. It's an all
and
star team,
it's a
and,
it's a
and
pretty
I
big deal.
yeah, and one of the things I wanted to explore with my friends was like, hey, what if we created a 5-day immersion where we kind of gave people an experiential an arc of the healing process, like from
Mhm.
beginning to integration. And so that's what we created all together, was like, what is a pathway, or one of many pathways, but a pathway towards the process of healing trauma. And it's still open enough to really have everyone's own true unique experience within that.
Ugh. Well, and how are the days? Is it kind of like a full retreat experience? Is it like a symposium? What can
It
we
is,
expect?
yeah, it is a very full day with these folks. These folks will never be teaching again together. Some of them are retiring. And so that was also part of this event, was the celebration of them all together. And the day is, so in a lot of like symposiums, you have to decide which class you're going to. And there's always FOMO of like, do I go to his class or her class or their
Mhm.
class? And they're happening at the same time. And we're like, why would we create that sort of FOMO experience, especially at a trauma event? So this is a arc. It's one class that happens at one time, and it's a progressive process through each class towards that healing arc. And the days are full. We end each day with a musical performance by some
Of course you do.
amazing, amazing musicians and artists. And it's really exciting. And during the day, there's 4 classes. There's also a movement or yoga class in the mornings. There's a tremoring session in the day. There's book signings. There's opportunities to do private sessions there's a whole list of practitioners that are there. um, and also panel discussions where you get to ask questions to these incredible humans, these wisdom carriers around somatics and trauma. And yeah, it's a really exciting event. So
Oh my gosh. Well,
it's a
we
vibe.
are it is such a vibe for 5 days. Wait,
Yeah,
it's 5 days. It's going to
three full
be
days and then 2 half days. Yeah.
Okay, 3 full days and 2 half days.
Mm,
The somatic trauma healing immersion. It's going to be in San Diego, one of my favorite
mm,
places,
yeah.
at the end of February. So February 29th through March 4th. So it's definitely coming up. I'm going to link it in the show notes, and you guys can definitely go and check it out as well at theembodylab.com/somatic trauma healing immersion. But we'll link it in the show notes. We'll also link where you can grab Dr. Scott Lyons' book, Addicted to Drama. You see all these
Addicted to
things.
drama.
I mean, you just kind of came out of the fold, and who knew that you were the reason why all of these things exist. We Before we get into our igniting round, I just want to honor all of the work that you've been able to do. I feel like you are the truest embodiment of
Oh.
real healing, and how healing could be both. We can have the
Mm,
laughs, and we can, we can have the light and the shadow. We can have
yeah.
the smiles and the cries, and the
Mm,
and all of it in between, and they all can
yeah.
coexist. And I feel like everything that you have been able to create at the Embody Lab is just such a it's I'm just so honored that I can call you a B
Call me
a bestie.
anytime. You
A
a
bestie.
bestie. Besties. Wait, did you get my bestie charm bracelet? The the matching heart halves in the
Oh
mail
my
yet?
gosh. Nope.
Do you remember
Nope.
those
But
from when we were kids?
yep. Yep. So I'm waiting for mine. Brave
It's
Table
coming.
fam,
It's in the
hold
mail.
me to it. Hold me to it, because I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it online when Dr. Scott sends it to me. So, okay, you
Yeah,
ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So
What
what
am
are
I ready
you
for?
braving? Well,
Oh, what?
this is where
Oh,
we get into our final, igniting round.
oh yes, yeah, yeah. The
Um,
igniting round. I'm ready for it.
okay. So, what are you braving at this stage and season of life?
I'm braving not being right, and allowing uh, my perspective to be um, I would say allowing my perspective to not be the only one. Not that that sounds really like I'm pretty limited in that, but it's just something I'm expanding on.
That's really good. That's actually really good.
Yeah,
Really good.
especially
Okay,
in
next one comes
relationships.
from,
Damn.
I mean, that's a big
I
one. I feel like I need
mean,
to add that to my list too. All right. This next one is from my
mm,
question card deck.
yes, I love
Let's
that
see.
deck.
It's coming up. All right. Your
Your
awareness. Oh, we've been talking about
mm-hmm,
awareness.
mm-hmm.
Okay. What word describes this season of life?
Well, the first word that comes to mind is squid, and I have no idea why. Um, it, I've done these association games before, and they never like. This is part of like my funny little mind is like they don't make a lot of sense always, but later on I'll find a meaning for it. So squid,
Squid. Okay.
squid,
All right.
yeah.
You also took stand-up comedy, didn't you? You were a comedian for a while.
I was a
A bit.
drag queen comedian, so which
Yeah, that's what I thought.
yeah, it was slightly different than
No big
traditional
deal.
stand up.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yo, I had to pay my way through grad school somehow.
It's true. Being a drag queen comedian, I mean, that'll definitely do it. That'll definitely
Yo,
do it.
the
Okay.
all the tips added up to that PhD.
Ooh. Okay. When was the
Yep.
last time you felt nervous about meeting someone new? Also, awareness. Okay.
Mm,
Likes and dislikes.
I think I get a little nervous every time I meet someone new,
Mm,
and I kind of pair that with excitement.
mm.
And usually the antidote to keep me grounded is like just to stay curious. Like, what am I curious about this individual? Like, even if they're like some superstar celebrity that I'm meeting for whatever reason, and I'm like curious about like what they eat for breakfast. I'm just curious what they eat for breakfast. Like, kind of going
Yeah.
that route.
Yeah. Placing curiosity first. Okay, my last question as we round this out
Mhm.
is what would you say to the younger Scott today?
What would I say? I think I would say, wow, you really did the best you could given the circumstances. And, you know, the truly when those moments that were the absolute lowest lows, um, like those are part of what allows for the highest of highs to come.
Hmm.
I think that's what I would say to that little
Hmm. Wow.
guy.
What a conversation. All right. Everyone needs to follow Dr. Scott. He is on the interwebs. Where can we find you on IG? The
I love that you said the interwebs. I also say the interwebs, and I also say the Facebook still. Um,
Facebook. Yeah.
the Facebook. I'm on TikToks and I'm on the Instagrams
Oh.
at Dr. Scott Lyons, and I have a website to drscottlyons.com where you can find upcoming events, blogs, maybe a singing or dance video. Who knows?
Yes. Are you doing those dance videos on TikTok? Because I can so see you doing them.
Not yet.
Oh, cool.
No, no. I think I'm maybe in the future. Oh, if you do it with
Okay.
me, I will do it. If we
Oof.
partner up and
Mm.
create a dance troupe for the
Oof.
TikToks, but we always have to wear our charm bracelets, our best
Yeah, we'll
friend
have
charm
to wear the
bracelets
charm
together.
bracelets. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
done. Well, done.
Done. Deal.
Done.
Deal. Deal.
All right. All right.
The world doesn't know what's about to come out. It's gonna be magic.
We're going to break the internet.
We're gonna, something's gonna happen. Yeah.
Well, this conversation was just epic. And thank you for being who you are, love. Honestly.
Thank you. Oh, I love you. Thank you for being who you are and doing all that you are doing in this world and making
Mm.
it a really rock star place to live in.
Oof.
Ooh, you rock star.
Likewise. Until next time on the Brave Table.
I think when we're moving through turbulent times, it always feels like a death. It always feels like you're never going to be able to get over this. And I think that's why people are stuck. That's why people don't actually make the decisions. That's why they don't leave their jobs. Or they can't. They're in so much shame. The thought of picking themselves is too big for them. They'd rather stay exactly where they are.